Dr. Marianne Premack here. Happy Thursday. I'm making this video for my students in EDU4866. This is following up my first and second video on our assignment, which is the simulation assignment, engaging families of early childhood students with special needs. So this is the third video. Make sure that you watch the first and the second video first before watching this one. Also make sure that you have all your assignment materials pulled up on your computer while you watch this video, or print it out in front of you, maybe with a highlighter and a pencil or pen or some way to take notes, so that you can be following along with the assignment directions as you're watching the video, and taking some notes for yourself. Highlighting some areas so that you have a really solid understanding of what the assignment is. And I am doing a section by section video tutorial to help you, and hopefully that's making this assignment go smoothly. And I really do suggest you doing the assignment kind of like how I'm doing the videos, which is taking it in pieces, piece by piece, section by section, and accomplishing it that way will make it seem so much less overwhelming, and you'll do so much better on the assignment, because it is a big assignment, 30% of your grade, and I want everybody to get full points. So today we are talking about the third section, which I'm going to begin shortly, but first I want to just circle back to the second section to emphasize a couple points that I made in my last video. So in the second section, you will address 3 concerns with a parent of a child that is in your classroom who is an early childhood student and who has special needs. Your concerns are about that child, or possibly 3 different children. You can pretend that you're talking about 3 different children in your class. One with a behavioral issue, one with a speech issue, and one with a physical development issue. So if you go to our Revel textbook, you can see, I'm pulling up our Revel textbook right here over on my other side of the screen, and you can see that chapter 5 is about speech and language impairments. So you can look into chapter 5 and find a suitable speech and language impairment to discuss as a concern with your parent for section 2. So you would, it needs to be a speech and language impairment that really does exist, and you can make that section better by reading about what that speech and language impairment looks like, because you need to let the parent know in that section, when you're writing up about each concern, the behavioral concern, the speech and language impairment concern, and the physical disability concern, you need to let them know how you became aware of this concern. So you visually observed it, you heard it, you noticed it in the way that the child was behaving, other teachers noticed it, maybe you were approached by an administrator or an assistant in the classroom, or by another student, or all of those. There's different ways that you would gather information about a student that would allow you to express concern to a parent, that would allow that parent to know, how do you know that this behavior is occurring? So you can't just tell a parent that this behavior exists or this concern exists without explaining to the parent how you know. Why are you expressing this concern? How do you know that that concern is there? How is this problem being demonstrated in your classroom? How is it impacting your class, other students, the student themselves, right? So you need to include that information in your expression of concern about a behavioral concern, a speech concern, and a physical development concern. So chapter 5 talks about speech and language impairments. That's in your Revel text. Chapter 10 is about emotional and behavioral disorders. And chapter 11 is about physical and health disabilities. So if you turn to your textbook, which I know we haven't used that much this term, but this is a good time to break it out and check it out and look at those 3 chapters to help you identify um, a concern that you can express to a parent that is appropriate concern for an early childhood education student. So I did want to just go back to that second section really briefly and touch on that. Um, and remember that for each of those concerns, you need to express the concern and explain, describe how you became aware of this concern. So it's really like you're pretending to be an educator and you're pretending to have a conversation with a parent. And we really need to practice that professional communication. And this assignment builds. So the better that you do on the second section, the easier it will make this next third section. Because in this next third section, you are going to take one of those concerns, a concern that you expressed to this parent about physical development of their child, a behavioral issue or concern that you're having with their child, or a speech impediment concern. And you are going to focus in on one of those concerns. This section is called Communicate Strengths First. So I'm on the third section of 6. So check out your Communicate Strengths First section on your assignment description. It says, when communicating with parents about their child's academic or emotional needs, it is often helpful to frame the conversation about strengths and talents before dealing with areas of concern. Okay, so you probably have heard this, that, if you want to say something to somebody about an area where they need improvement, it really helps to sandwich it in between some areas where you're communicating they have strength. Maybe you've participated in a peer review in another class in which you needed to say some positive things and then give some constructive feedback. So that's what we're trying to do here is practice a way that you would communicate with a parent in which you communicate strengths first and then you express that concern. So you already have practice expressing concern from section 2. You already have information about a concern there. You don't have to do any more finding of a concern because you already found and expressed to the parent or to 3 different parents, however you want to think about it, about 3 different children, those 3 concerns about the speech, the physical, and the behavioral. So this, the way that we're practicing this communicating strengths first will set a positive tone and help even defensive parents, right? Some parents don't want to hear anything negative said about their child. They have a really hard time dealing with that. But you are going to have to communicate concerns with parents. So it's important to practice how to do that because it can really damage a relationship that you have with a parent, and relationships with parents of our students is very important, especially in early childhood. Or it can help you have a very collaborative relationship with a parent, which is extremely helpful because when you're teaching in a class, that parent needs to be reinforcing at home what you're teaching in your classroom. So you need to be able to collaborate with parents. It's very important, especially early childhood students, and especially parents of students with special needs. There needs to be that consistency in the home and in the school. And you have to collaborate together to create that consistency for children. So, in more cases than not, parents and teachers share the same impressions about strengths and weaknesses. So, often, if you have a concern about a student in your classroom, likely that parent of that student also has a concern or is aware to some degree that that student is having an issue in that area. Okay, like if my child is biting another child in the daycare, then likely my child is also biting at home. Okay. So the challenge here is how to communicate and initiate a conversation without pointing fingers at anyone about being overly sensitive or unnecessarily concerned. So it's important how you communicate your concerns, just like we practice in the section 2. You can't just come out and say, "Hey, I think your kid is, you know, hitting everybody." You have to figure out a way to say it in that demonstrates how you know that that behavior is occurring. And then in this section, you're going to practice saying something nice and constructive and positive, and then expressing that concern. So we have an example here, and you're going to read the narrative example and then compose your own example of at least a paragraph in length that communicates a strength about a student and then a concern. And like I said, you can use one of the concerns you already created from the second section. So this narrative reads, Camille is so much fun to have in class. She is very caring and plays well with other children. She has a great sense of humor and usually gets things other kids tend to miss at this age. I'd like you to know that I'm keeping an eye on her verbal language skills. We understand her wants and needs most of the time, except when she gets excited. When this happens, her words are sometimes difficult to understand. Now, I think you can kind of imagine that if you were a parent and a teacher came to you and just said, when your kid talks, I have a really difficult time understanding them, right? And that's how you express the concern versus what you just heard as, here are some things that your child does really well, and here's an area of concern. So I think you can understand that the first example, the narrative that's included in your assignment description, that example is a much better way to express concern to a parent. So you are going to do a similar thing with an imaginary student in your classroom. And this narrative that is given as the example is very similar to what you might send home in a note to a parent, or what you might verbally say, or in a conversation or in a teacher conference. So all of this is very real world applied skills. These are skills that you will need when you manage a classroom, or if you assist in a classroom too, because even as an assistant, parents will come to you to get a second opinion. If they hear something from the teacher, they'll want to seek out your opinion as well. And you'll need to be able to communicate these concerns with parents, whether you're the teacher or the assistant. And so that's why we're practicing this. So hopefully that gives you some clarity about this third section. As I said, you are going to communicate some strengths about a child. So you can think about what are some strengths you might observe in an early childhood student. Um, think about positive things that you could say about um, that student. You could use examples of siblings that you have or children that you have interacted with. What might you imagine that they would do well in your classroom, but yet also, you need to be able to communicate that concern. So I hope this helps, and really appreciate all the hard work that you're putting into this assignment. It will serve you well in the future. Stay well and take care.